First, we heard from Garrison Hudkins. He's a neighbor at 2 Jefferson Crossing. He knew both Jennifer and Fotis, and he also met Michelle. On the 25th of May, he learned that Jennifer was missing. First, he got a call from a neighbor saying, hey, there's unmarked police cars out front. And then he learned that Jennifer was missing, ultimately from a news article. He did see Fotis riding a scooter after that. Apparently, Fotis said to him, hey, you know Jennifer is missing, right? Fotis asked him to make sure he retained his security footage so he could prove that he was home on the 24th. And apparently, Fotis also told him that they needed to make a timeline. Fotis called this neighbor on May 30th asking to review the video, but the witness was at work and could not, and Fotis ultimately never got to see that video. This witness knew Pavel and said that Pavel did snow plowing on that street. He said the Tacoma was usually parked in the back at 4 Jefferson Crossing, but because of the way the driveways are situated, he was able to see that from his driveway, even though you can't see it from the road. The police attended his residence on May 27th asking for the video. They asked about vehicles, relationships, that sort of thing. He emailed the videos to the police the following Tuesday. In July, he looked at the May footage from his surveillance videos. And the reason he did this was because he wasn't sure how long Ring would keep this video, and he was worried about it getting destroyed because Fotis had asked him, make sure it doesn't get destroyed. And while reviewing the video, he saw on May 29th something that caused him concern, so he sent it to the police. Now, the police were only looking for video from the 24th, but this witness saw vehicle movements on the 29th, and they played the video. At 8:04 a.m., there was a black Yukon going toward 4 Jefferson Crossing. Now, this is a rental. At 8:56 a.m., you can see the Tacoma and the Yukon leaving 4 Jefferson Crossing. And the witness said this is not consistent with normal vehicle movement. This business of him taking the initiative and sending this video that he noticed from the 29th to the police, I think was terrific. He noticed that the vehicle movements were inconsistent with what he normally saw. And any change in behavior is worth noting, even if you don't know what it means at the time. And sometimes, you can notice something and later on you find out what the explanation was, and maybe it was innocent, maybe it wasn't. And sometimes there's some little detail that the police need, or that leads you to ask a different question, that leads you to another revelation. So taking note of these things is always a good idea. In the direct questioning, the prosecution was sure to ask if Fotis used the word they when he referred to making a timeline. And the witness said yes. Now, we're talking about a conversation and a specific word that occurred years ago. This is going to become a thing between the prosecution and defense. On cross, the defense was asking about this black vehicle, and the guy was saying, well, yeah, it's a Yukon. And the defense is asking, oh, you know a lot about cars? I mean, are you in the car business? And the witness says, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, I am. The cross-examination on this was pretty typical for the most part. Well, did you record all of the traffic all of the time? Kind of questions, right? The defense was trying to sort of hit back on this business of, the prosecution bringing out the word they and putting the stress on that. And the defense noted that's not anywhere in this guy's statement to police. So they were going back and forth, and the prosecution was objecting pretty much to every question that the defense started to ask. And really, I'm starting to feel bad about how much I teased about the defense lawyer objecting so much in the beginning of this, because now the prosecution is just as bad. Anyway, so the judge is having to referee all this. And parse it all. And at one point, there was a little exchange that I thought was a little humorous. So I'm going to play that for you.
If that's the question, overruled. If that's not the question, sustained.
Well, that'll be the question then.
So the defense keeps trying to clarify what they meant in respect to who had to do the timeline. And he was talking about it needed to show that Fotis was home. And again, the word they is nowhere in that statement to police. The prosecution continues to object on the defense's focus on they and it. But the thing is, it was the prosecution who was doing that on direct to begin with. So obviously the prosecution thinks it's important. And the defense is trying to bring out, it's not in here. You are focusing on this, and now I can't focus on it. It's not even in here. And I want to say two things about this little bit. One is that it may look like, and I thought even the judge thought so too, that the defense is going after the witness for a prior inconsistent statement. But I don't think that's what the defense is doing. I think what the defense is doing there with this line of questioning is hitting back at the prosecution, because the prosecution was trying to slip by a characterization and put an emphasis on a characterization that was never in the statement at all. So I really don't think the defense was going after the witness. He was going more after what the prosecution was trying to characterize it as. And the other thing about this whole business is this is what the witness is saying that Fotis said to him. So this wasn't Michelle saying we had to do a timeline. This is Fotis. We know already that Fotis was a manipulator and that Fotis manipulated people's perceptions. So Fotis could say anything. He's calculating like that. This is not Michelle's words or Michelle's intention or Michelle's knowledge or Michelle's anything. This is Fotis. And before he left the stand, it came out from the witness that Fotis was very condescending towards women. The next witness was Mike Meehan. He's an attorney, mostly family law, but also works in other areas such as criminal and civil. His job for the Dulos children was basically to represent the children's interests. And this is something that was court appointed. He was appointed to the Dulos case in August of 2017. It came out that Fotis wanted everyone to live in the house at 4 Jefferson Crossing. And I mean everyone. Fotis, Michelle, the Dulos children, and Jennifer. Did Michelle know this? That he wanted this? So there's an interesting insight into where his brain is. In November 2017, all parties agreed on a parenting plan, and that included Michelle. So she was allowed to see the kids and be with the kids. In January 2018, something happened. Fotis's parenting time was suspended. He was not allowed any contact with the children. So Fotis had to fight and go through court to try and get contact back with the kids. Contact was gradually reintroduced, but the visits had to be supervised, and for the time being, it was only with Fotis. Michelle's time with the kids would have to be introduced further down the line. So they're gradually going to build all this back. Between March 2018 and May 2019, there were a number of court hearings, and eventually that's when Fotis got supervised access, but the kids were still not allowed to be with Michelle, and Michelle had to leave if the kids were coming to 4 Jefferson. On March 21st, 2019, Fotis and Michelle had a telephone conversation with Mr. Meehan. Fotis had just won in court supervised visits, but was down and upset because in those supervised visits, Michelle was not included. So she still wasn't allowed to see the kids. Mr. Meehan took notes in the course of his job, and he made notes about this phone call. Instead of explaining, I'm just going to play you the witness reading the note. It's actually quicker.
I'm just reading the whole note.
Not a problem. Thank you. So this is dated March 21, 2019. It's titled Phone Call with Fotis, Dulos and Michelle Troconis. States, today I received a phone call from Fotis Dulos who wanted to discuss the court's memorandum of decision regarding supervised visitation. Mr. Dulos was upset because the court didn't grant immediate access between Michelle Troconis and Nicole and the minor children. Mr. Dulos was concerned and didn't know if he could continue on with the litigation because it was having an adverse effect on his relationship with Michelle. Mr. Dulos repeatedly asked if I could intervene and do something on behalf of the children regarding this issue. I reminded Mr. Dulos, as I have throughout the case, that I do not represent him and am not permitted to act as an advocate for either party. Fotis asked if I could speak to Michelle Troconis. I agreed and he placed her on the phone. Michelle wanted to know what she had done to cause the court to order that she not be permitted in contact with the children. I informed her that the court's recent decision created a pathway for the parties to start discussing a plan to reintroduce her and Nicole to the children to work with me as GAL. I asked her even if she had ever met or spoke with Jennifer Dulos. She indicated that she hadn't, but would be open to speaking with her or meeting her for coffee to discuss being reintroduced to the children. Michelle indicated that she didn't move here for all this and that she felt badly for the children and Nicole. She believes that they have all been the victim of this litigation. She is also divorced and she doesn't act this way with Nicole's father. Her tone was calm but very down. The conversation lasted about 5 minutes with her. The conversation ended after that.
So this tells me that it's Fotis who is more under stress and he wants what he wants, right? And Michelle seems to be not understanding and she's asking, what did I do? It sounds like it's not really that. It's, look, we're making a path forward. And so, you have to deal with this for a while. And I found it interesting that her response wasn't, oh, she's horrible. Michelle's response was, okay, well, I could talk to Jennifer. I'm willing to have a coffee with her and we can talk about it. And the fact is that Michelle indicated that, look, I went through a separation from my daughter's father, and nobody acted like this. So to Michelle, this is foreign. It's not normal. Her parents were divorced and didn't act like this. So I'm getting the impression that she thinks like, look, let's just work it out. So her go-to response isn't about harming anybody, right? Fotis, on the other hand, well, he's condescending towards women. He was abusive. He wants what he wants. He's controlling, all of that. He's a different story. So these two people, Michelle and Fotis, completely different ways of viewing things. And all of this, the stress, Michelle not being happy, things not going the way he wants, what Fotis believes is the strain that it's causing between Michelle and Fotis, I believe that goes to motive for Fotis. He already had motive, this fear of also maybe losing Michelle, if that's the case. Well, that just adds to the motive. The witness agreed that in April of 2019, Fotis said to him that he thought custody would be in his favor. This witness watched Fotis read the report of the custody study and said that Fotis was both encouraged and outraged. And almost right away, there was a motion filed from Fotis's side in family court. And the motion was partially heard in May, but was not completed, and Fotis was frustrated. Early in the morning of May 25th, 2019, this witness got a phone call from Fotis, and Fotis sounded excited. And instead of explaining it to you, I am going to play you the clip in which the witness reads the note.
You can read that, please.
Certainly. It's titled Jennifer Missing, dated May 25, 2019. Today, I received a phone call from Fotis Dulos at 10:26 a.m., who informed me that Jennifer Dulos was missing. He stated to me, "Mike, have you heard the news?" I replied, "No." He then stated, "Jennifer is missing." I noticed the tone in his voice to not be down or somber, but to be more excited. I don't know what to attribute the tone to his voice to. I asked, when did she go missing? And he indicated sometime yesterday, 5/24/19. I asked him where he was yesterday and whether he had an alibi. He said he was home in Farmington all morning, then in meetings. He mentioned he had cameras in his house. He immediately asked about the children and wanted me to address their safety. He told me they were in New York with Jennifer's mother and Lauren. He went on to tell me that Jennifer had made dental appointments for the children in New York and that he didn't know about the appointments or agree to them. A review of OFW shows Jennifer did advise him of a New York orthodontist on 5/13/19 via OFW and offered to advance the cost. I ended the call with him and began getting phone calls from Attorney Midler, New Canaan PD, and Jacob Petranker. I spoke with New Canaan PD, and they informed me of the investigation involving Connecticut State Police Major Crime Squad. They informed me that Jennifer's home in New Canaan was a major crime scene. The police asked for permission to interview the children, and I authorized the police to speak with them.
To me, this is a doozy. First of all, it was Fotis making the call. Fotis' tone, he's not down. He's excited. He's going to get what he wants now. And one of the things that really jumped out at me is how Fotis volunteered. I didn't know they had dental appointments. What? The mother of your 5 children is missing. And this is what you're choosing to volunteer? You're not expressing huge concern about her well-being? And notice, Fotis in the past had told other people, oh, well, Jennifer ran away before. Notice Fotis isn't saying that here. He's not telling this guardian, who is the eyes and ears of the court, apparently, oh, look, she ran away. That's not anywhere in this note. And the volunteering of, well, I didn't know. And it turns out Fotis did know. And so isn't that date a perfect opportunity? His kids won't be there. The nanny won't be there. This is bad for Fotis. Except this is Michelle's trial. On cross-examination, the defense brings out that Michelle was not a party to the divorce. Fotis was sometimes self-represented, sometimes he used Jacob. We heard about Jacob before, and a guy named Mike Rose. They seem to go through the evidence again. Then the issue of the psychological report was brought up repeatedly. And by brought up, I should say they tried to bring it up. The defense kept asking questions and the prosecution would object. The defense would reformulate her question and the prosecution would object. And it got to the point where the prosecutor didn't even bother to sit down between objections. I think it's important to note that in March 2019, the family court judge ordered the parties, so Fotis and Jennifer, to work out something so that Michelle could be included in visits or parenting with the kids. And through cross, it came out that Michelle was planning on moving out of state, that she didn't like the acrimony between Fotis and Jennifer. In her world, this is not how you handle things. And according to this witness, Michelle had said that she felt bad for the kids having to deal with all of this. On April 24th, 2019, this custody report was completed. And the prosecution keeps objecting to this. And the defense says, well, look at the prosecution is saying that this time frame is really important, but you're not letting the defense put in something around the time frame. So this was a lot of just objection. As a result of this report, Fotis' lawyer filed a motion for custody of the children. And, according to this witness, as of May 2019, Jennifer and Fotis were communicating with more ease. The defense also gets out that there were scheduled court hearings that were to occur after May 24th. So I think the point is here that it wasn't over. Because often when we see violence, it is at the end of a court hearing or a legal proceeding where the person or the perpetrator has no more options. So this points to the fact that Fotis felt like there were more options. On May 25th, when this witness was speaking to Fotis, he asked Fotis, "Do you have an alibi?" And he told Fotis basically that he needs to account for his time. And the witness indicated that this was a general conversation about that, and it wasn't a matter of this witness giving Fotis any kind of instruction. This witness is not and was not Fotis's lawyer. And the other thing that the defense was able to get out of this witness is that, in the witness's opinion, Fotis lied a lot. Well, the defense lawyer did it again. I was pretty much falling asleep in my chair listening until he asked a question that made me bolt upright. The afternoon started with legal arguments over the cell records. The defense wanted an AT&T rep into court. His concern was whether or not the records were subject to erasure. The prosecution got up and in response argued something that the defense wasn't arguing. But the judge is smarter than that, and he picked up on it and said, "Well, the court hears two different arguments here." And he addressed them both. The cell phone records were allowed in as expected. The witness the state called was FBI agent Kevin Hoyland. He works for the Cellular Analysis Survey Team, and they looked at all the cell tower information. And note, this is very different from GPS location information. Cell phone tower information is much less precise than GPS. They looked at both Fotis's and Michelle's cells. He explained that a cell phone reaches out to the best tower, which is not necessarily the closest tower. And when you use an app on your phone, it's carried over the data side of the network. So the cell tower is not necessarily going to pick it up. Sometimes you can see that data was used, but sometimes what that is an app initiating something on the phone, and it's not user initiated. He went through a map and showed all the phone calls and locations, and what we saw was expected. We did see Fotis's phone at 4 Jefferson Crossing, and the prosecution pointed out how many phone calls were missed, with the exception of one phone call at 8:26 a.m., and that was that phone call from Greece. It also shows a call at 1:53 p.m. where Fotis's phone signal bounced off a tower near Avon, and he called Michelle and her cell phone was at home. And then there were calls between 3:16 and 5:16. And again, that was during the whole back and forth when Fotis was phoning Michelle saying you need to bring cleaning supplies to Mountain Springs. And we know all this. Then they moved to May 29th. At 8:39 a.m., Michelle's cell was at home. At 9:12, she got a call from Fotis, and again at 2:20. And it looks like her phone was somewhere near that car wash in Avon. On cross-examination, the defense got up and talked about if you're using your Wi-Fi, will it route over Wi-Fi or will it go over the cell tower? And he got out that if you're using Wi-Fi, it wouldn't show up on this FBI report. Then the defense said this, and this is what made me sit up straight. He's talking about topography and trees and did you look at a topographical map? And, I don't know about you, but I was ready to fall asleep. And then he says to the witness, did you know that that home cell site is on top of a mountain? Do you remember earlier in the trial when he showed this drone footage flying all over? And it's showing how high up, how elevated the Jefferson Crossing home is. And it shows the valley and everything below. It showed the topography of the area. I know I didn't know what the heck he was doing with that. And I suspect a lot of people didn't know what the heck he was doing with that. But now it's making sense. when they were talking about which cell tower that the phone connects with, that the phone sees as best, it's going to be the one that is within the line of sight or the closest one. And sometimes the one that is within the line of sight is the best because there are no trees or concrete or anything for these radio signals to go through. And the witness also said that in a valley, if you've got trees, they almost act as a funnel, so that signal will go down a ravine. Remember when the defense was asking about the Walmart beside the car wash? And he's saying there's a clear line of sight, and do you see any trees obstructing the view? I think this is why. And the other thing that this might have implications for is Jennifer's cell phone connecting with her Suburban after 2:00 in the afternoon on the 24th. So we already know that in order for them to pair, both have to be on. So the Suburban has to be on and the cell phone has to be on. And trees in the way would make a difference. Do you remember earlier in the trial, the defense was asking one of the witnesses, well, is Lapham Road, is the edge of it elevated or is it down a ways? And it just seemed like such a weird question, right? Well, now it makes sense. Where Jennifer's vehicle was found, it was a little bit lowered. There are trees and all kinds of things to obstruct any radio signal. So that further solidifies the point that Jennifer's cell phone had to have been with the Suburban at 2-something in the afternoon in order for it to pair, and it had to be close, unobstructed by trees and embankments and everything else. I keep going back to the accomplice, the unknown male whose DNA was on her bloody shirt and was on much of the evidence in the bags. That unknown DNA, I'm not talking about inconclusive, unknown male DNA. Then the defense points out that on the map of these cell towers, it looks like the one cell tower is very close to Jefferson Crossing. And then he asked the witness, do you realize that that cell tower is actually at the bottom of a cliff? And the witness says, no, I didn't realize that. Well, that changes everything. At the end of the day, after the jury was dismissed, the prosecution made a very serious allegation, and we'll get to that. I'm just going to go through the testimony in order here. One of the things that this FBI agent testified to was the fact that while Fotis and his phone were on Albany Avenue, Fotis made a call to Kent Mawhinney. The witness agreed that the cell tower that's down the mountain would not provide coverage to 4 Jefferson Crossing. This seemed really important to the defense. The defense continued on about how cell signals could travel on and on and on, and again about going through valleys and rivers and a cell signal not being obstructed, and it could end up miles away from the tower nearest to it. And then the defense was asking about cell phones in motion and how you would track those. And the prosecution interrupted, except he didn't have an objection, sort of. And this was really weird. It's actually really rude to do this. It goes against courtroom etiquette. And he asked for a sidebar, like right now. The judge wanted to sort of continue on. So the judge assumed it was an objection. He said, well, if you have an objection, this is, what the court is hearing. And the prosecution was saying, no, we need to have a sidebar right now. I'm really sorry, but we need to do this. It's really important. So they had a sidebar. And when they came back, the defense wasn't on this line of questioning anymore. He said, I'll wrap it up. And then he brought up with the witness, did you do another report on another person? And the witness had. Turns out that the FBI did do a report on Kent Mawhinney's cell information, but the prosecution wasn't presenting that. So why is that? Well, the defense then put that report on Kent Mawhinney's cell information into evidence and then didn't take it any further. then that seemed to be the end of the day. The witness was excused, the jury left, and the cameras kept rolling. The prosecution got up and complained that Michelle had material that she wasn't supposed to have. That Michelle had material on her computer monitor that's sitting in front of her. She had material on there that people behind her could see. And the prosecution accused her of doing this on purpose. And then the prosecution also accused Michelle's mother of mouthing something to the jury. But apparently that had happened at some earlier point. And the prosecution also said, well, and this isn't the first time that Michelle has had something on her computer. And one of the things that she has is this sealed document. There are a couple of issues there. One is this being disseminated to the public somehow? And how does she have access to this document that she's not supposed to have access to? So the defense got up and said, look, we're using our monitors and we're under the impression, we were reassured nobody can see them, that there would be no cameras on those monitors, that people couldn't see that stuff. So it's not like they knew it was all able to be viewed and did something on purpose. Also, that the defense was not informed prior to this that there was any issue until the prosecution makes this big allegation and puts it on the record. And this is really serious. And I have a question about this document. So who saw that? The prosecution said, well, it was a friend of Jennifer's who recognized a name on the document. Well, if this document is sealed and nobody is supposed to have it, how would anyone recognize the document? Even Jennifer and Fotis did not have physical custody of this document. So how does somebody recognize that then? The judge was not happy. The judge wanted to know who it was that brought this to the state's attention and how that came to be and how they know what's in this document or how they recognize this document. And the judge said, if this is true, then that's a violation of a court order and there would have to be a separate contempt hearing. That's all I've got for you today. Trust your gut. I'll see you in the comments.